What's up, everyone? I'm here at my NFL Week 7 DraftKings picks. Hope all of you guys had a very profitable Week 6. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look back at my Week 6 picks. And it was a very mediocre week. Now, in that video, I mentioned that particular week, I wanted to go with more of a tournament style video. And what that means is I wanted to pick guys or share guys that I was considering to pick in tournaments. Therefore, they were a little bit more risky and they weren't kind of a sure thing like I usually do. I usually do about 50-50. I'll usually go with guys I'm considering in cash, and I'll usually go with guys I'm considering in tournaments. And last week I just didn't do that. So this week I'm getting back to the norm. But a couple of different guys that I want to point out really quickly that kind of just really shocked me. Number one was Delanie Walker. If you would have told me that Marcus Mariota would have had nearly 30 DraftKings points against the Cleveland Browns, I would have probably assumed that Delanie Walker would have had between 12 to 15 DK points and probably would have had 5 to 6 receptions with, a receiving touchdown in there. But Delanie Walker only ended up having 2 targets. Now, I haven't gone back and actually watched this game yet, so I don't really know what happened besides the fact that he just wasn't getting targeted. But Kendall Wright, of all people, actually had a very successful Week 6. He had over 100 receiving yards and was definitely the biggest surprise on the entire slate, I think, in my opinion. So Delanie Walker definitely let me down. Jeremy Maclin and Travis Kelce were just a product of the Chiefs' running game. The Chiefs got out to a lead, and the running game was just so successful for them that they just didn't need to throw the ball, and that was really a product of that for them. I'm not really too regretful on those two guys, Maclin and Kelce, just because it was a good matchup. It was a perfect situation for them, and it's just the game unfolded a little bit differently than we all expected. So I don't regret that pick. So again, it was just kind of a mediocre week, and hopefully we can right the ship this week. So let's get to this week's picks. Okay, so moving into some Week 7 stacks, the first two guys that I have down here are Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. They have a really, really good matchup this week against the San Diego Chargers at home. I really like this spot for them, but specifically for Julio Jones a bit more. I'm viewing Julio this week as kind of this week's Antonio Brown. Usually Antonio Brown, as long as he's below that kind of 9,500 mark or so, people are pretty much going to always force him into their cash game lineup because it's the safest play, and you're really paying for that floor. You're paying for that guaranteed number of points that Antonio Brown is going to give you. Well, this week you can't do that because Antonio Brown has Landry Jones as his quarterback. So Julio is going to slide into that spot for me, at least, and I think he's a really safe cash game play. That said, Matt Ryan is a really safe play as well, in my opinion, but I just don't think many people are going to have him, at least in cash games, because I think if people are going to want to go with the $7,000 tier in quarterback, they're just going to go all the way to the top and get Tom Brady. But I like Matt Ryan just as much as Brady this week, I think, and it's a little bit easier to stack these two together because the Falcons' offense is a lot more concentrated. That said, Matt Ryan is averaging 9.4 yards per pass attempt right now, which is first in the NFL. And San Diego has allowed 300 passing yards in 4 of 6 games played this season. There's no Jason Verrett, which is huge for both of these guys. It really needs to be said because the San Diego's allowed 2 100-yard receiving games by an individual receiver so far this season, which, isn't that bad. But both of those games have come while Jason Verrett is either dealing with that knee injury and still playing through it, or after he got placed on AR and was done for the season, or IR, and was done for the season. So, obviously Jason Verrett being gone is a huge blow to this Chargers secondary. Matt Ryan has a passing touchdown in every single game this season and has 2 passing touchdowns in every game but 1 this season. So everything is just pointing towards both of these guys being really, really safe plays. Julio Jones is leading all receivers in fantasy points per game right now at 20.1. This game has the highest Vegas total as we speak at 53.5 points. So you can't really go wrong with either of these guys, and I feel really good about both of them, but really feel good about Julio Jones. All right, so for my next stack, I have Andy Dalton and AJ Green, and they're in a similar situation to Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, I think. They're facing a very, very poor passing defense in the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns ranked 26th in passing defense in the NFL right now. They're allowing 285 passing yards per game, and I think it's just a great opportunity to get players who are in a very similar situation to Matt Ryan and Julio at a much discounted price. Obviously, AJ Green isn't a significant discount compared to Julio, but the big savings you're going to get is with Andy Dalton to Matt Ryan. So I think Andy Dalton is a very serviceable cash game option this week at $6,000. I think AJ Green is a really good option as well. Now, the one predicament you're going to be in when building a cash game lineup is, are you going to go with Julio or are you going to go with AJ Green? Because it's very unlikely you're going to be able to get both of these guys in your lineup. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but you're really going to be scraping at the bottom of the barrel at some other positions when you just really don't need to be doing that per se this week. So, I like Andy Dalton's price a lot. AJ Green is averaging over 10 targets per game. He's third in overall targets at 62. AJ Green actually has the most receptions in the NFL right now at 42. The Browns have allowed 4 100-yard receiving games to an individual receiver, the last being Kendall Wright. So if Kendall Wright is going off against the Cleveland Browns defense, it's almost unfathomable what AJ Green could be doing. So I really like both of these guys, and if you want to play these guys in cash games, I can't blame you. So, I mean, you really just got to decide if you want to pay up a little bit here and go with Ryan and Julio, or if you want to pay down a little bit here and save some money. Again, there's so many different ways you can build lineups, especially this week. So, yeah, I like both of these guys. Okay, so for the third and final stack, I have Blake Bortles and Allen Robinson. Now, these are two guys that I feel like I bring up quite a bit in my videos because I love playing them in fantasy. I think they're both really, really good fantasy players. That said, they've really underperformed to this point in the season, and if they can't perform well in this particular situation, then it's really, really going to hurt my confidence on playing these two guys moving forward because they literally can't get a better matchup right now in this particular season. They're facing off against the worst passing defense in the NFL, against the Oakland Raiders. I bring it up almost every video, but it still hasn't changed. The Raiders are allowing 312 passing yards per game. They're allowing 6.9 yards per play, which again is the worst in the NFL. So everything is pointing towards these two guys playing well. Now, I wouldn't blame you if you want to stack Blake Bortles with somebody other than Allen Robinson. Allen Hurns is definitely an option. Hurns hasn't played particularly well this season. He hasn't really had, those big, touchdown receptions, those long touchdown receptions that we've seen him have in past seasons. Marquise Lee has even been getting in on the action and getting quite a few targets. So Julius Thomas is not a bad option. So there's a lot of different options you can go with on this Jacksonville team, and you really have to target the passing game for Jacksonville because Jacksonville is has a terrible rushing offense right now. They're only running for 71 yards per game right now, which is second worst in the NFL. So if Jacksonville is going to win this game, they're going to have to do it through the air. Right now, this game has the third highest Vegas total at 48.5 points. And I think it really makes sense to play both of these guys. I think they will be a little bit higher owned than we've seen in past weeks because they're facing such a poor passing defense. That said, I still think that other people are going to want to go with different options on the board, and maybe some people will try to stay away from Allen Robinson because he's still a little pricey considering how poor he's played so far this season. So I like Bortles, and if somehow the Raiders end up winning this game, maybe there'll be some garbage time. Blake Bortles is a garbage time hero. I've talked about that a little bit. So, I mean, really no matter how this game goes, Blake Bortles is going to have to get in on the action. So it really just is a matter of who you want to stack him with. And I think Allen Robinson is the best option. Okay, so finally moving into some running backs. The first guy I want to talk about is LeSean McCoy. He was a guy that I gave out last week, and he was facing the worst rushing defense in the NFL in the San Francisco 49ers. Well, this week he gets to face the second worst rushing defense in the NFL in the Miami Dolphins. They're allowing 147 rushing yards per game, and they're allowing 177 rushing yards per game at home. And yes, this game is in Miami, so that's also a big bump. Right now, McCoy has been averaging 7 yards per carry in the past 2 games, and a lot of that credit should go to Richie Incognito. He was one of the Football Outsiders heroes this week, and there was a 79% success rate when running the ball up the middle with LeSean McCoy. That's, incredible. So this offensive line for the Bills has been looking really good, and that's really where they've been doing a lot of their damage is runs right up the middle. And then once McCoy gets in the open field, he does his little elusiveness stuff, and he breaks some tackles, does whatever he needs to do, and he's off to the races. So I like McCoy. He is a little expensive, but I definitely think that he's one of the best options this week. Okay, so next up I have DeMarco Murray, and I personally think he's going to be the most popular running back of the week. but with good reason. He's going up against this bad Indianapolis rush defense. We all know that they struggle immensely against the running back. And, right now Indianapolis is allowing almost 5 yards per carry. They're allowing over 30 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. And in the past 2 games, both running backs they faced have had 100 yards rushing at least. So everything is pointing in the direction of DeMarco Murray having a really good game. Some interesting numbers that I have here on DeMarco is he has 9 red zone targets right now, which is obviously the most red zone targets on the Titans. That's actually 7th in the NFL overall right now. 7th. That's not just among running backs, but overall among all eligible pass catchers. So that's pretty ridiculous. So DeMarco Murray is getting all of the red zone targets for the Titans, and he's getting all of the red zone carries. So if they get in the red zone, they're probably going to be giving DeMarco Murray the ball, or at least looking to give him the ball. So it actually really shocked me. Delanie Walker does not have that many red zone targets this year. So right now it looks like they're either looking for DeMarco Murray or Andre Johnson in the red zone, which is pretty interesting. So I like Murray a lot. He's kind of at this price point where you can get that elite running back with the good matchup, but don't have to pay up too much. It's really going to be tough to get both of these guys in your lineup, and I really don't think you need to get both LeSean McCoy and DeMarco in your lineup this week. So I think I like Murray just as much as McCoy. He's a bit cheaper, not significantly cheaper, but DeMarco Murray is getting a little bit more involved in the passing game as well, since I just mentioned he's getting all these red zone targets. So I think I like Murray just as much. He's a bit cheaper, so I'm leaning towards Murray between these 2 guys, but you really can't go wrong with either one of them. Okay, so finishing up the running backs here, I have Spencer Ware. And this is a guy who I think people are going to be scared off of this week because of Jamaal Charles, which is slightly understandable. But, Jamaal Charles still only had 15 snaps last week compared to Spencer Ware's 40. Andy Reid has come out and said he still thinks that Jamaal Charles is not ready for a full workload. So right now, everything looks like it's probably going to be a 60-40 split to Spencer Ware's favor. If that's the case, I like Spencer Ware this week. They're facing off against the New Orleans Saints, and one thing that really gets overlooked because of how bad the Saints' passing defense is how bad their rushing defense is. So they're just bad all around. Right now, they're allowing 34.9 fantasy points per game to running backs, which is the most in the NFL. The Saints have allowed 10 rushing touchdowns, which again is the most in the NFL, and they've done that in only 5 games compared to 6 games for the majority of other teams. Some other things that need to be noted is Drew Brees is not nearly as good on the road as he is at home. Those home road splits are severe. Seriously, it's pretty ridiculous. So it's very likely that the Saints may not even ever, be up in this game and have to play from behind. So maybe the Chiefs are going to run the ball again, just like they did last week against the Raiders. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be noted. And personally, again, be sure to stay up to date on the news. If something comes out says, we think it's going to be a 50-50 split, maybe I'll get off of Spencer Ware. I'm not super crazy about the price, but I think as long as it's still a 60-40 split in Spencer Ware's favor, at this price point in this matchup, I still like him a lot. Okay, so moving into some wide receivers now. The very first guy that I want to talk about is Mike Evans. And the first thing that I have written down here is targets galore. This guy gets so many targets. It's unbelievable. He's averaging 12 targets per game right now, which is the most in the NFL. He has 36.5% of all of this team's targets, which is just insane. And, add in the fact that Vincent Jackson has now been placed on IR. He had the second most targets on this team. Well, now all those targets got to go somewhere. So that's likely that Mike Evans is going to get even more targets now. So Mike Evans is a guy you need to play. He's definitely a guy you can consider in cash games and not really feel bad about playing him. He's had a receiving touchdown in every game but one this season so far. And that one game that he didn't have a receiving touchdown was against the Denver Broncos. San Francisco 49ers have allowed 10 receiving touchdowns this season, which is the second most in the NFL. One thing I did have down here is that San Francisco is much better at home. That said, San Francisco is running this up-pace, up-tempo offense, so it's very likely that the Buccaneers are going to be able to run quite a few more plays than they usually would, which could mean Mike Evans gets even more targets. So I don't think it's impossible we could see Mike Evans with, another 17-target game, maybe even flirting with a 20-target game, and I legitimately mean that because I just don't know who else they're going to want to throw the ball to. You have other guys like Humphreys and Cameron Brates kind of formed into a guy, but just Mike Evans is by far the best receiver on this team, and again, just Jameis Winston likes to lock on to Mike Evans, and it just looks like a perfect spot to get Mike Evans for a reasonable price for a guy who could realistically get 15 plus targets in this game. Okay, so next up I have Terrell Williams, and I like this player a lot. I personally think that he's the best receiver on the Chargers right now, but he just doesn't have the numbers to show for it yet. That said, he actually has the most red zone targets on this team right now at 10, and he's caught 7 of those in the red zone, and he has 0 touchdowns right now. Now, I doubt there's too many players in the NFL right now that have 10 red zone targets, have caught at least 70% of the red zone targets they have, and have 0 touchdowns. So if he continues to get these red zone targets, the touchdowns are going to come. Now, the one thing that does worry me a little bit is that Melvin Gordon is getting a ton of red zone carries. He has the most red zone carries in the NFL right now. So that can be a little worrisome. That said, I think that Terrell Williams is still a really good play at 4,400. I am considering him in cash games. I think he's a good option in tournaments as well. The Falcons are allowing over 300 passing yards per game at home this season. Again, I mentioned it earlier that this game has the highest Vegas total at 53.5. So maybe this game can end up being a shootout between these two teams. So right now, I really like Terrell Williams. All right, so the last wide receiver that I have down here is Golden Tate, and I think he's going to be a really popular play because of the huge game that he put up last week, and I really didn't understand why he just randomly went off until I really dove into what happened. But if you go back and take a look at the numbers last week, it really made sense because Eric Ebron and Theo Riddick did not play. Those two guys combined totaled over 20% of all of the team's targets up to that point in the regular season. So it really makes sense why Golden Tate really had a big game because he just got more looks. Marvin Jones definitely had some looks in that game as well, but Golden Tate was really able to capitalize on them. And I think that no Eric Ebron and Theo Riddick is really, really crucial in this game. If those two guys do not play again this week, I will play Golden Tate. If one of them plays, I still may play Tate, and if both of them play, I may not play him. So again, it's really critical on whether those two guys play or not. Washington is kind of an average passing defense, but the one guy I do want to mention is Josh Norman may be shadowing Marvin Jones. If that's the case and Eric Ebron and Theo Riddick don't play, I'm definitely going to play Golden Tate because I think it's a very, very smart play. All right, so finishing up here with some tight ends and defense. First guy I want to talk about is Vernon Davis. Now, we're assuming that Jordan Reed is not going to play. Unfortunately, he suffered another concussion. That he's got a long history of concussions dating all the way back to his days as a Florida Gator. So hopefully he can recover. But, it's been well documented how bad the Lions are against opposing tight ends. They've allowed 7 touchdowns to tight ends, which is the most in the NFL. They're allowing 18.1 fantasy points per game, which is 4th worst in the NFL to tight ends. So I think Davis is a good play. He's cheap at 2,900. I think he's not a bad option at all, especially in tournaments, maybe even in cash. I'm probably not going to be going that route, but I don't hate it. Next up, I have Charles Clay, and he's just a guy who's so cheap that, you can kind of just slot him in and hope you get 10 points, which is exactly what they have him projected at right now. And he has 5 receptions in the last 3 games. He has the most red zone targets on the team, which he doesn't really have that many, but he still has the most red zone targets nevertheless. And he has the second most total targets on the team at 34. So he's getting almost 20% of all the targets right now. So it's actually not too bad. So without Sammy Watkins and without Robert Woods really producing the way that the Bills want him to, Charles Clay is really getting some looks, and I don't think he's a bad option. He did have a scare last week. I think he left the game, I believe, but he ended up coming back in, and he seemed to be fine, and he's already been cleared to go for next week. So he's good to go in Week 7, and he's going to play. Last but not least, we have the defense here. I'm going to go with the New England defense against the Pittsburgh Steelers here. And again, this is probably going to be a really popular play at 2,900. And the only thing I have down here is they're facing Landry Jones, they're facing Landry Jones, and they're facing Landry Jones. I literally wrote it 3 times. That's all I need to know. Yes, the Steelers have elite pieces on their offense. That said, if you don't have that centerpiece like Ben Roethlisberger, it's really going to hinder those elite pieces. And I think that Landry Jones is just really going to struggle. Now, it is a big bonus for Landry Jones that he gets to be at home, but I just think that Bill Belichick is going to dial up things that, maybe this guy has never seen on a football field before. So I think the New England defense is a pretty safe play at 2,900. They're definitely going to be a team I'm going to consider playing in cash. All right, so that's going to do it this week. I really appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching the video. Let me know down in the comment section if there's any questions, comments, concerns you guys have. I'm also really interested in some suggestions you guys have for the NBA season coming up. I've been getting some questions on that, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to go about that yet. So if you guys are interested in seeing some NBA videos, please drop a comment. Let me know, and then let me know how you want me to go about it. Should I upload just one video a week? A couple of videos a week, whatever. Let me know how you want me to do it. So again, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Later.